Guys, we have just a little bit amount of time here. I've got low ceiling syrup, so I'm going to start this on my knees, but you guys don't have to if you have high enough ceilings to do this. So usually I start my stretching routine from standing, and what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start doing these lateral stretches. Remember, we want to get into those erector spinae, those obliques and whatnot, and we want to start just doing this nice long one. Notice I'm holding a little bit before I release, because I'm tight, because I've not been doing this maintenance lately. And when we're doing this, I do want to try to keep as lateral as possible. If I can get a little bit of lat stretch in there, that's great, but I'm mostly working on these kind of side muscles here and the multifidus and erector spinae. I don't want to focus too much on like this forward fall position and rounding my back and then bringing back up. Like the engagement through going back up is going to be good, but kind of that forward fall we talked about, that what is happening in the spine. We're really starting to weaken those erector spinae, which actually kind of are one of those muscles that we really want to protect as far as trying to stabilize the spine and prevent herniated discs and that kind of thing. They're one of the biggest defenses you've got there. So I don't want to really overstretch those going in this direction, especially since they don't really support that much going in that direction. So side, 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 side. Now when I do kind of this sort of motion, which I've done or had Jet do in previous videos for workouts and whatnot, when I am doing this, I'm going through a range of motion. I'm trying to release synovial fluid into, which is that lubrication fluid, right, into my low back. I'm not really trying to like force maximum rotation when I'm doing this. I'm just moving through, right? On the same note, like doing kind of circles here, working through bending your elbow, rotating your lower arm, right? That's going to, again, we're trying to release synovial fluid. We're trying to wake up that tissue there. So these types of movements are going to be relatively good for you. Going out, cross, and I'm going into a little bit of an active pec stretch there, but I'm not trying to overdo it with this, guys. All right. So once we kind of get down into this, I usually tend to go into kind of this more kind of sideline position, and from here I want to push in my belly button. I want to be as tall as I possibly can. I want to, if I do, I want to feel a little bit of a quad stretch back here, but that's not really my focus. I'm going to come down and forward. Oh my, I should have been doing this. And I can feel that my rectus femoris is very tight here. So basically, if I let this back leg drop and bend, I'm taking the focus out of that this quadricep rectus femoris area, and more so going into the ilioso as an iliacus, right? So from this position, I can bring an arm up. I'm using this for stability. You can be right here. You can do this shit. And I'm pushing my belly button, trying to be as tight as possible. And then I tend to move away. NASM, NASM, kind of go this way with it. For me, I always find that the stretch is right there if you turn away, right? Because I'm moving away from that leg. Now, if you're not quite getting that one, because that one can be a little bit difficult, I can drop my knee, but then I'm going to push myself as far forward as I can. So I'm still going into that, as much of that extension as I possibly can, and I can lift up, tilt to the side. And because I don't want to just show you guys this and get myself all in balance, I'm going to go ahead and do the other side right here. Okay. So, and even from this position, if you need to be more stable and you need to come down into this position, you can hit that twisted psoas stretch right there. Arms as high as you can get them. Turn, look the direction you're going. Push your belly button in. Tucking tail like a scared dog if you can. And all that. Right? So from here, I'll go into this kind of runner's position, and I'm going to hit my hamstrings a little bit here, right? If you want to get tighter because your hamstrings and your calves share fascial tissue, you can lift your foot up as you come up. Now, on this one, your low back's not going to be perfect, especially if you're trying to stay low. But don't worry about that too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push my hips back, lifting my toes up, and I'm going to try to straighten my back as much as I can. It's okay if it's still rounded, but I'm really trying to push my back down as opposed to trying to bring my nose closer to my knee, right? Because I'm not trying to, if I get here, I'm not really stretching my leg, I'm stretching my back, right? And I will tend to just hold that for a couple seconds, bend, and back, trying to go a little bit deeper, trying to push that leg, my back in even more. Alright, and so from here I'm going to come back up to the center position. I'm going to squat down and then move to one side. Now, I could internally rotate my leg and then drop my hip down towards my heel to get a little bit of this adductor here, right? And you can external rotate here, but this one needs to be kind of straight ahead. So I'm getting this internal rotation, external rotation here, so I have more depth. My other leg being in the other position isn't hindering my ability to drop down, right? The other side. Dropping down at that diagonal. I think about bringing this hips joint into my heel here. Okay, so we're getting into the adductor complex, especially if you have flat feet, especially if you have knee valgus issues where your knees turn in. This is going to actually be a very good one for that, because again, these are one of the contributing muscles for that internal rotation of the leg. All right. Now, when we're doing your quadricep rectus femoris stretch, really putting your boot on and just bringing your heel to your butt, trying to stand as tall as possible, push your point of that knee directly into the ground. That's going to be actually the best for actually getting into the vastus muscles, right? If we want to, we can push in our belly button and we can start to stretch our leg back. So I'm bringing my knee away to kind of get more into that rectus femoris, right? And down. Both sides here. Now, this kind of reminds me a little bit of the hurdler stretch, right? Which is one where you're going to be on the ground and you're going to have your leg, I think this one back like this, but you've got this kind of external rotation of the leg, or actually, I don't know, it's like this. This is really, really bad for your knees, so we're not going to do it, and that's part of the reason why I'm not particularly familiar with it, because I know that it's not so great. So, coming back up for a second, when we do a calf stretch, I'm going to put my back foot back and down on the ground. I'm going to step the other one forward, and then I'm going to focus on keeping that heel on the ground as I move my hips forward, right? So, right there, nice and straight. So right now, again, we're going into more of that gastrocnemius in your leg, which is the longer one that spans both the top and bottom of your leg, right? So, if what I want to do is I want to hit more of that soleus muscle, right? What I want to do is I actually want to have my knee bent, and I'm driving my heel down to the ground. Now, if you feel compressive issues in your ankle, then this might not be the best stretch for you, right? And there are other ways that you can kind of hit that that soleus muscle. Again, all I'm trying to do is pull back with my knee bent, so I can use like a towel. I can use there are stretching items that you can use now, webbing, whatever. So, coming into the ground now. When we do this this butterfly stretch, a lot of people will grab their pinkies and they'll start to pull up. This is going to stretch your peroneus longus a little bit. It's going to potentially help a little bit with flat feet, but just a little bit. And it's one of those things that it's going to change the way that you walk and move and run. And a lot of people, when they do that pull up, they end up actually spraining their ankle when they're running because it loosens this side too much, and we get into this foot eversion, because I think it's backwards from what I think. So yeah. But the overpronounced high arch, right? And so from here, I like to grab my ankles, and I try to sit as tall as possible, and then I push down with my elbows, right? So I might rock a little bit, but again, I don't. If this is exciting your adductor complex and the muscles that we're trying to stretch here, this is going to be one of those things that's going to, if you really start rocking and your body starts tensing up, stop doing that, right? It's going to be better to just hold and maintain, right? So, I'm getting into your glutes a little bit more. I'm going to set my knee down, so I'm kind of in this kind of S position. I'm going to take my other leg, I'm going to cross it over the top here. Now, the easy way of doing this is I'm going to straighten my back up, as I draw my knee in. So I'm just kind of hugging that knee. So I'm bringing my knee to this opposite nipple. Right? And I'm trying to straighten my back as much as possible. If I'm slouched into this, I'm not going to get a very good stretch. But once you start to really build your posture up, that's kind of when you're going to get a little bit deeper into that glute. All right, that guy, over that way. Now, a lot of people will use this and they'll kind of go all the way over here. Now, I do this, right? I'll use my elbow and I will use that to drive my glute, and I'll give you a deeper stretch. So I get really tall here and I push on the knee. I don't really want to really focus on like twisting my body and twisting my spine too much, right? Because again, we don't want to overdo it when it comes to spine, and there's only so much rotation we can get out of it. Pardon me for half a second. I am very cotton mouthed all of a sudden. Woot. All right. So, when we're doing like these types of hamstring stretches, remember, I don't really want us to overemphasize hamstring stretches too much, because again, a lot of times we feel tight in our hamstrings when it's really like our psoas that's tight and our abs are underactive. So we are not, our psoas is pulling us into the anterior pelvic tilt, which is what's causing us to feel tight in our hamstrings. If you haven't watched the anatomy videos, go back and watch those, because those are going to help you understand what I just said. So again, when I'm here, again, just like before, I am trying to keep my back as straight as possible and projecting myself up into that diagonal here, right? So I'm protecting my back. Now, if I point my toe, I can go a little bit deeper and I can hold this position a little bit, and then I can pull back on my toes. If you can't reach your toes, don't worry about it, but just try to point them back towards your nose, and then that's going to get you a little bit of a deeper stretch. So I'm going to point my toes, kind of elongate up and out, and then pull back. Right, and if I want to get into that calf, I can do it from here. I could bend and potentially get into that soleus here. If you're really having trouble with that soleus and are really having trouble trying to get to it, to try to get to release and lengthen out, because you're having compressive issues, probably go in and use a foam roller, right? Use a lacrosse ball into that and do that self-myofascial release to go through and kind of work on that. All right. So to get into that piriformis, I'm gonna have my leg parallel to my chest when I'm here. I'm going to have the other one stretched back, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to stretch with my boots on, okay? Toes back to my knee. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to try to roll my hip so that it gets as parallel to the ground as possible. I'm going to sink into that side stretch. And I can just kind of relax down. Not a whole lot of pressure there on my spine, right? I'm just relaxing and stretching out and forward, keeping my boot on to help protect my knee, and I'm trying to square my hip. Ooh, that one's tighter than the other one. All right. So, another one to kind of get into your back chain a little bit, and it's this is kind of more of one that I did a lot in ballet, which is to sit, grab your arch, and if you can not usually stretch, touch your toes, this is actually going to be a relatively good one. So I'm going to come up here, and that's as far as I can go for today, right? So I'm just stretching out, building my posture as tall as I can. I can come right here, put both hands on here. Okay, so we're hitting kind of, here I'm hitting everything pretty evenly, whereas here I'm going to be hitting probably more of this internal chain. When I come here, you're going to feel that a lot more on this lateral chain. So if you have lateral tightness in your hamstrings, then this is going to be a good one to do, whereas that one's going to be if you have more medial tightness in your hamstrings. Right? Because I don't want to be completely imbalanced here. And the last one that comes into this series here is going to be back to the middle, but I'm going to grab both here, and then I'm going to stick my head through. Right. You could also grab both arches at the same time, sit into that guy, and a lot of times that will be one that I'm going to fall into that butterfly stretch if I lose balance. If you want to do that one and you have issues with balance, just put your back against the wall. Speaking of the wall, so actually before I get on to that, when we were talking about the hamstrings, and one of the reasons why I like kind of this one is that we are stretching from a different position, right? So we are already elongating this back position by having our knee closer to our chest and then stretching outward. Versus having our legs fully stretched and trying to do it from the hips. So it's just kind of a little different approach of actually getting those hamstrings to be elongated. And again, if I'm going from this bent position, right, I am probably going to be hitting more of that. Actually, I don't think that's true. I was going to say the hamstring, the short head, but I don't think that's true at all. So, on the wall here, guys, I'm going to put my foot on the wall. I'm going to have my butt as close to the wall as I possibly can. I'm going to come up, and then I'm going to put my boot on here. It's going to be a little bit of a hip flexor stretch, and I'm going to drop my hips down into it, and then I'm going to push onto my knee here. Again, this boot being strong here is going to be very, very important here. And this is getting really deep in there into that TFL. That's really nice. But this is going to be one of those ones you can do it if you don't want to put your foot on the wall by reaching through and grabbing the inside of your thigh. You don't need to go out to the outside. And then from here, I'm going to use my elbow to push out on that knee instead of my palms. But I feel like when you use the wall, you can actually get deeper into it, and you can actually get more force. I find the other one a little bit awkward. So I'm going to get into this. I could feel a little bit that I had a little bit of pressure in my knee on one side, so I'm working through changing just very lightly to see if I can relieve that tension by rotating my tibia and fibula there, right? Because apparently that one was really tight. Again, for most muscles, and I know that we're doing like a lot of leg muscles right here, which is going to be, the ones that we kind of get habitually tight anyways. But with any muscle, if you're wondering how to actually stretch it, you just need to think about what it does, right? So, for example, if I wanted to stretch my anterior tibialis, right, it comes directly down here, it crosses over my ankle, and it attaches into my arch, so it pulls up on my arch. If I wanted to stretch that, I want my toes to go forward and a little bit to the outside, right? I want to plane it that way, okay? Just lightly, and I can get a little bit into that anterior tibialis. It's not one that we generally have to, and I shouldn't stretch personally because I have that low arch on my left side, but it's one of those muscles that, if you're driving a car a lot, if you drive a car or a truck professionally or whatnot, you're doing a lot of this flexion, right? Moving your foot back and forth. Now, I would say that it's probably still relatively balanced, and you actually might end up with more calf tightness because that's the loaded side, is you're always pushing on the gas. But that's one of those things that can happen. So, when we pick out which stretches that we want to do, one of the first things that we do as personal trainers is that we look at what it is that you do for work, right? And so if you're doing a job that involves a lot of sitting, then you're probably going to have tight hip flexors. So your rectus femoris, your sartorius, your thinker muscle, your iliopsoas and iliacus. I think I said rectus femoris. All those muscles are going to be generally pretty tight, and so you're probably going to want to work on them. If you're working in food service, like I have a lot of times, and working as a personal trainer, you're going to end up with, tight calves is going to be one of the most common ones. When you're on your feet all the time, you're going to have issues with that. All right, so for these guys, well, this is splintery. Oh my God. I can bring my foot to either side of my knee, depending on how far I want to get into, what I want to get into, and I'm going to keep my shoulder down on the ground and come over here to this side, right? And so I'm getting into that glute because, and if I wanted to, again, the more I come out here, it's going to change that angle and the rotation of my knee as it's coming through this position. So you can play around with that, right? I'm not getting into it nearly as much here in this position as I do when I cross my ankle to the other side here. And so one of the keys to this one, and I actually do this backwards because they say, palms down on the ground and try to keep your shoulders on the ground. But if I start to lift my shoulder up, right, lift my elbow up a little bit, it's going to push my shoulder down easier, right? So if I'm trying to put my hand on the ground, I'm trying to push my hand on the ground, my shoulder's going to rise. But if I take my hand off the ground, my elbow off the ground, it's going to be easier to put that shoulder on the ground and keep it there, right? I did that for a long time, so there we go. And again, my body's going to follow my eye, so if you're still having issues with that coming up, notice that I'm looking the direction of the side that I want to keep down. Right, and that's going to help you kind of get into there. Now, from that position, you could you know, just something like this. You can grab, bring your knee to your chest, and start to straighten out to get into that hamstring a little bit more. Another one that we kind of do from for ballet, and this is going to work into your obliques just as much as it is for your hamstrings and all that. But we go into like the second position. I usually go thumb down, and I'm going to lift my elbow up and that direction, right? And I'm trying to lift my chest up. If I'm here, I'm not going to hit it quite right. So I'm going to be here, right? Then we can turn and we can come this way. Again, if I'm doing this, I want to be thinking about straightening my back and going up in that diagonal rather than bringing my nose to my knee, right? If I pull back on my toes, I'm going to get deeper into that stretch, right? There was another one, so it was here. Oh, I finished with that one because it's going to have more rotation. So if we're just here, guys, it's going to hit a little bit differently. We're not going to get quite as deep into it. So those are kind of your Alice Cone stretches here, right? This kind of thing, working through that. So, being a person who learns from his mistakes, I brought a mat this time. Just another one I forgot. When we get over into this stretch, guys, and we've been doing this for a while, I'm looking over here, I'm trying to get my shoulder down and all that. I can also begin to stretch my leg out and get over here. This is going to get a lot deeper into that glute at this point. It's also going to get kind of this lateral side of my hamstring as well. Sometimes from here I'll do this one, right? Try to keep everything on the ground, relax out. So that's just a couple that I kind of forgot to throw in there. You can also, let's actually do this instead of just talking about it. Aha! I did this one a lot back when I was doing ballet, and you can tell by my flexibility at the moment that I haven't done ballet in a very long time. But get my butt as close to the wall as I can, and you just kind of relax down into here. One thing I forgot to mention about your hamstring stretches and anything like this, I don't tend to keep my legs completely straight. Right, for the same reason for that bicep, right? If I'm stretching through the bicep and all that, and I'm allowing myself to go into hyperextension, I'm going to be destabilizing that joint. Same thing's going to be true with my hamstring stretches, guys. If I want to keep my knees healthy, by the way, if you have an issue with your knees locking a lot when you stand, that's the balance between your quadriceps and your hamstrings is off. Right, your quadriceps are too tight, your hamstrings are too weak, and that's the case for most people. So, when you are doing your hamstring stretches, I often will put a small foam roller or something underneath my knees so I can't lock it out. Right, I can't invert it. I don't want it. I guess you can't see that one, but I want to go like really, really tight into that stretch where I'm actually stretching the ligaments. I just want to get in the hamstrings, and remember, I don't necessarily need to, because a lot of that stretch is going to be coming from the tilt of my pelvis. I don't really need to go into full extension with that, right? I don't need to do that. And I can also bring my knee to my chest and then stretch that way, so I can't even get to that hyperextended position at all. So it's just something to kind of consider there, guys. Again, really, and I'm probably going to talk a lot about corrective exercise within the next couple of weeks, so that you guys can start talking or thinking about ways that you can address things and become more flexible and start to get more balance within your body. And that's one of those things that I think you really have to have your anatomy down and really, really kind of understand what each muscle does and all that. And I do recommend like using resources like KenHub. There's an anatomy coloring book out there that's going to help you with that. So that's going to help you be a lot more prescriptive about the way that you stretch, because again, we're not trying to just be Gumby over here. We want to have the right balance structurally. We want to be mobile and really that hip leg flexibility. And that's something like back when we did our first warm-up video, we did this like awkward thing, right? Where we go here, right? That's a hip mobility drill. Coming up here and doing your windshield wipers, the spinning of the legs and the windshield wipers, all those guys are going to be ones that are going to help you with that hip mobility, as well as your stretching is going to. And you want to just listen to your body. Again, guys, if you have that crunchy feeling where your back's going into hyperextension, where it's always kind of your pelvis when you're standing is tilted forward, like your butt's lifted a little bit like a doe running through the woods. knowing that and being like, okay, my back is compromised in this way. Okay, what's going on there? I've got tight hip flexors. I've got weak hamstrings. If you are walking around like, you know, this kind of thing where your tailbone's tucked the whole time, you feel like you don't have an ass, that's going to be that your hamstrings have become tight and too dominant, and your abs might be tight as well. So that's something that you want to massage through and stretch through too. And you know, you could stretch your abs this way, right, with this kind of upward facing dog thing, pushing your belly button in and coming up. Just be very careful because that puts compressive forces onto your spine, so you just want to be listening to your spine quite a bit on that. Yeah. As far as like stretching forward fall stuff, again, I don't think that's really the healthiest thing to do. Yeah, I think that's what I got for you.